Watch your green dreams climb. Grow smarter with the amazing Dr. Zymes.
Let's start with the whole lecture. Composting, compost tea, enhancing soil biology for life. That's what we're going to talk about today, but there's really so much to talk about. What we can really only do here is, try to touch on the important information and get you hopefully inspired and get you hopefully able to just start taking those first steps and making your own piles, making your own tea, and really enhancing the biology in your soil and helping us to heal the planet. These are little microbes that grow in the compost and the compost tea. A lot of little tiny dots, it looks like, but there are a lot of bacteria. There's humic acids, there's fulvic acids, there's different varieties of protozoans, there's fungi, there's disintegrating plant parts. The whole thing is a big nutrient cycling festival, and that's what we want to do. We want to get the nutrients to our plants, and these are the guys that are going to do the work for us. And we're going to just grow them in our compost and our compost tea. So the benefits of the compost and compost tea, or one of the number one benefits, is the elimination of soil erosion in a variety of ways, mainly the fungus and the lack of tilling, which you will do when you are now growing this way. You don't need to till anymore. Tilling destroys your soils, destroys your structures. You need that fungus, and you need plant roots in the soil to keep your soil knitted together. It's like a sweater, and when you lose a thread, the whole thing goes. And your soil needs to have that structure in it, which only the plant roots and the fungal hyphae and the biology living in the soil will give you. You need that soil to be more like a sponge that holds water when it falls, and not a thing where it's all going to run off and you're going to get big ditches like this. There's no covering on this soil. There's no mulch. There's just nothing. That dirt's just washing away. You can see in the ditches, there's no roots in there. There's nothing to hold that soil together. So if a flood comes, a disaster like that will wipe out a crop like this. Compost and compost tea is going to improve your soil and texture, and you're not going to dry out and come to this situation in the dry season where you're not getting any air in your soil. You're not getting it where your microbes need it. The aerobic microbes are the ones that feed your plants, and they need air. This soil is just like clay when it's wet, and it's like this horrible brick when it's dry. And this is not helpful to plants. Look how there's nothing covering the soil there. There's hardly any plants at all, except for a few desperate little creatures. And that's what weeds are made for, to cover the soil and do their best to try to give you some biology as fast as they can. The biology which is holding your nutrients. And this is a little picture of a little compost tea soil sample. You can see a little bit of fungal hyphae in there. You can see a little bit of bacteria in there. You can see little aggregate parts where all those little bacteria, their whole life is based on just gluing the bits of everything together to make themselves little habitats. They're like little architects, and all they do is build, build, build all day. They're the gluiest, stickiest little creatures out there, and they love to glue things together all day long. So do the fungi, but they're not as good at it as the bacteria are. But they're both into gluing these little bits of sand, silt, clay, etc. together in order to make particles of soil that air and water can pass through, and life can thrive instead of being suffocated or turned into putrefied anaerobic situations. Let the biology take up the nutrients and hold it in their bodies, and when you water your plants with this biology, the nutrients are held in the biology and not running out the bottom of the pot. This biology hangs onto your soil. It glues itself to your soil. You don't lose it out the bottom of your pot, but you've got to let the nutrients have a chance to be taken up by the biology. When this biology goes through its cycles of, being predator and prey, and it gets killed or it eats and has to poop, then those nutrients are released in plant available form and your plants can take it up and thrive. This system is full of so much biomass that it can easily thrive if you just give it a little help. It really doesn't take that much work. The majority of the work is being done by the microbes and not by you. Reduce your water needs. Yes, even in drought and desert conditions. This ridiculously crazy over-the-top picture of a floral garden is in Dubai, in a desert where the water is beyond precious, okay? And the reason that they're able to get away with ridiculous over-the-top floral gardens like this is not just because they're rich. It's because Elaine Ingham went there and taught them how to grow with next to no water. You will notice if you look in that picture, there's not a single bit of soil exposed anywhere. There's nothing left to see the sun except the flowers. And she has told them how to grow with the compost and the compost tea and planting in swales and the ways that you do to get the most out of every drop of water and reduce your evaporation to the point of you're not wasting water anywhere, and you're able to get away with things like this even in Dubai. You know what I'm saying? And it's not just the mulch, but mulch is one of the really best ways of holding moisture in your soil and reducing the losses from evaporation. Not only does it do that, but it keeps your roots cooled and reduces plant stress, which is quite a bit of causes disease in plants when they're stressed. Just like in humans, when you're stressed, you tend to get sicker. You tend to come down with something. Your immune system fails when you're stressed. So plants, when they have mulch around them, I should have had the picture with the temperature gauges, but I didn't have that picture. So you can check it for yourself. You know, check out with one of your little laser thermometer thingies, you know, the soil temperature in the bare ground in a sunny day, and then move mulch aside and measure what it's like underneath the shaded parts of the plants. It's just, it can be 20 or 30 degrees cooler. It's just a huge benefit to the plants. Fertility yields.
Mary
Yeah.
Beth?
Hello.
Mary Beth?
Yes,
Yeah, I
sir.
wanted to take this time. Yeah, I want to take this opportunity to again to just thank everyone for coming on and to let them know as well. If you have any questions, go to the chat box and type some questions in. And what we'll do, you know, throughout the webinar there, we may stop and have Mary Beth to answer some questions. But we definitely towards the end will have a little time to have a answer and question session. But I also wanted to stop for a minute there to make sure that we had some people that was in the waiting room to get on there. And so, and what we're going to do is turn it back over to you, Mary Beth.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to turn it back over to you. And so you continue on, but thank you again for that quick interruption there for allowing me to do that.
Oh, perfect. No problem. Okay, so what you're seeing here, the increased fertility and yields, this is a little strawberry patch in my backyard, and I don't even have to put any effort in it at all to get buckets of strawberries out that look this gorgeous and taste this delicious. I mean, you can just see them. Oh, they're making my mouth water looking at them, and I get buckets of these things every year with just using compost tea, just using biology in the soil, and barely watering. If you just make sure you have no soil uncovered. Think of the soil as a Muslim woman in a burqa. She wants not a fragment of skin showing anywhere. Don't let your soil be uncovered. That's one of the first things you can do and the easiest things you can do. I'm not talking covering it with plastic where you can't breathe. It needs to be covered with something that can breathe. You want an aerobic, oxygen-rich situation in your soil. Composting compost tea will also reduce pest attacks by making your plants become chemically invisible, because when a plant is stressed out, it's putting out chemical signals, and those signals are picked up by these insects and they come running. They know that what that signal means is I am the weak one that needs to be culled from the herd, because we only want the strong to survive. So chemical signals are put out saying, take me, you know, I'm the one you want to kill. We don't want that happening in our plants. So we got to try to get their health in a situation where they aren't putting out that signal, and they aren't the first thing that all of the bugs come running to. Carbon sequestration, that's another one of the hugest reasons to use compost and compost tea and no-till farming and regenerative farming, is because you really want your fungal population to grow in your soil. Your roots and your fungus is what is going to be sequestering carbon in your soil more than anything else. In fact, planting trees and planting cannabis are both fantastic ways to carbon sequester, because they're both really good carbon sink plants, but so is fungus. And fungus will really sequester 1,000 pounds of carbon per acre per year. And all you've got to do is quit tilling and encourage your fungal population to grow by no more tilling and feeding the soil food web with things that fungus like, a lot of carbon-rich decaying plant matter. And that's, we're trying to do something in this planet to get carbon out of the atmosphere and back into the soil where it belongs. We're in a serious situation right now where we can't just keep pretending this isn't happening. And fungus is amazingly one of the best things to do that, one of the easiest ways that we can do that. Save time, money, and work. That's something really important to a lot of us. Like, you can save a lot of time, you can save a lot of money, and you can save a whole lot of very hard work when you grow with biology, with the soil food web, with the compost and compost tea, and the various methods that there are to do that. These poor people up here in the corner of this photograph, you can see there's not a cloud in the sky. It's a very sunny day. They're out there with plows, and you can tell by the shadows, it's the middle of the day. There's nothing on the soil that protects that soil from evaporation. They're out there hoeing weeds between their corn, trying to, raise a crop. And it's the saddest tale you can see, because it's unnecessary. If they had grower crops, they wouldn't need to be hoeing, mowing, tilling, anything. All they would need to do is throw some seed down and go back later and pick some corn, which is all that it should ever be to grow corn, because you will be naturally nutrient cycling and composting right on the ground with all of your materials that you're growing there, your cover crops and your debris from your field. You're not eating the stalks, so you leave them on the ground. You're eating the corn. And so that's how these things work. The main thing you want to have to start, if you're going to say, yeah, I do want to start growing and making compost a part of my routine, you really want to get yourself a carbon pile, and that's going to be wood chips or cardboard or straw or alfalfa. But I have to tell you, when you get a wood chip pile, to be very careful of the wood that you're getting, because some wood is diseased. If your tree died of, say, sudden oak death or something, you don't want to use the wood chips from that pile. You want to make sure that if you're using a wood chip pile that's from trees that either were cut down because they were in the way, or they got old, or something that wasn't a disease that killed them. If you got cardboard, of course, saying you just want to have things in a condition that isn't toxic. With straw, some people are very worried about fusarium or getting it from straw, and I was surprised about that, but I found out, yes, sometimes people do. And if you're concerned, you can always spread that out and sun solarize it. Over time, the UV rays will kill off any of that may be there, and you can mulch with that straw. Alfalfa, same thing. It really decomposes quickly, and it has a perfect carbon to nitrogen balance. It's a great asset in a compost pile situation.
Mary Beth?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we got a couple of questions that came in. Maybe we can shed a little insight to some questions that came in. One came in from RC that wants to know, can you add carbon like the kind in carbon filters? Will it break down to soil? Any benefits? Will it ever break down?
It would probably take a really long time to break down. I just don't know how quickly it would break down. I'm sure over time, fungus would get to it, because fungus, produces enzymes that break down rocks. So, I'm sure it could eventually, but the finer things are ground, the more quickly they become available to plants.
Yeah. Doghouse Media says he used straw on his white cover crop to lessen the nitrogen during bloom and add carbon on decomposition. But he also had a question as far as he said, does your ground cover like white clover act like mulch cooling as well as nitrogen locking?
Yes, but you won't get the benefits of the nitrogen until you mow that crop down or cut it down. You got to kill off the top part so that the roots begin to decompose in the soil, and then they release the nitrogen that your plants can then take up. And it's assumed that you're always going to have, you know, clover coming back from seed or whatever, so that you will always have some kind of a cover on the ground. But you do need to cut your cover crops down in order to let the roots die in the soil and decompose in the soil and release their nutrients back.
Great point. Well, thank you there. I'll let you continue. Excuse the interruption there.
Oh, no, that's no problem. I do have another participant up in the corner, though. I don't know, Tito Green. We're seeing his picture on the top left. But hi, Tito. And on we go. I'm going to go.
If you have someone, if you see one in the participants that's waiting in the waiting room there, just submit them in. If you see that on your screen.
I don't see that on my screen. I'm not sure where that shows. But
okay, I went ahead.
Okay.
I went ahead and did it.
Okay. Good.
Okay, we're good.
All right. So the soil food web is what we're trying to nurture here, because that is what's going to feed our plants, and that's what's going to do all the work. And it's a lot of bacteria and it's a lot of fungi, but it's also all the rest of the animals you see in this picture and all the rest of the animals you can think of. It's the microarthropods and nematodes, earthworms, spiders, and etc. They all work together in this system. None of them have a part that needs to be left out. They all have a nutrient to recycle, either through their feces or through their decaying bodies. And they all have a part to play in the system. The thing that we're looking for is balance. If anything here becomes imbalanced, you know, if all we've got is rabbits, we're going to be drowning in rabbits pretty soon. We do need a balance with predator and prey, and it's the same in the soil. It's the same on your plants. You just want to keep things in balance. It's the yin and the yang. It's no joke. And here's the Phytophthora ramorum. You do not want to see this in your soil sample and your compost tea sample. This is something you would never want to put out on your soil. This kills plants so badly. And it's unfortunately for where I live, it's coming to us. It's not really strong in my county yet, but it's in my state. This is what it does to trees. It destroys them in this way. It kills their vascular system. So it looks like they're bleeding black gooey tar out of all the pores of the tree, and it has huge black filaments that develop that you will see. That's another identifying factor. But it's a terrible tree killer, and it affects not only the oak, but other trees similar, quite a few. If you can see this picture, all the areas in the orange, those 3 states, Washington, Oregon, and California, are all regulated now because it's been found in those states. If you're in that pink area, you're in a quarantine county because it's been found quite a bit in those counties. And it's spreading, and it's a terrible thing, and it can affect a lot of crops. And, you know, what do? Just stand by and let it take you over? Nope. You find a way to get oxygen in your soil and to get beneficial fungi in your soil that can outcompete the Phytophthora and can outcompete the other pathogens that are fungal and want to kill your plants, along with other things. And part of that is with the use of compost and compost tea, you will get a more aerobic soil, a soil that can breathe and isn't fostering and encouraging Phytophthora species, which there are quite a few, and they're all bad. But this ramorum is the oak root, the sudden oak death. And here there's some armillaria on the right there that those are going to kill the trees too, and they're lovely fungus to look at, and they're edible, not all delicious, but they are edible. But they are not at all healthy for your plants. So if you have a tree that had a bunch of this kind of fungus under it. You wouldn't want to take that and put wood chips around your garden because you're going to be passing around a lot of fungus that you don't want to pass around. Hopefully you don't have a lot of that particular fungus in your life. It grows to huge proportions and really kills a lot of living trees. Okay, the fungus on your left there is a sort of a slime mold, and it's actually a beneficial one, and it decomposes the things in the soil. If you ever see a slime mold like that, you want to get your time-lapse camera out and start doing a picture series because they move fast and they're so interesting to watch. And some more things you don't want to see in your compost and compost tea piles. There's an E. coli bacteria there. Anytime you get clumping bacteria that clump together, it's never a good thing. I have never known that to be a good thing. You want free floating individual bacteria. And that mushroom up in the top corner is often found in the same place where the psilocybin grows, and it looks a lot like the psilocybin, but it isn't a psilocybin. It's a deadly gallerina, and you don't want a whole lot of those because only a tiny amount will kill you. So you don't want a lot of that in your compost area and things are around places where children and animals might ingest. Even a small bit of it is enough to kill you. And the little picture at the bottom was just one day when I was looking at some woman's plant under the microscope, and after we had washed off the leaves with the Dr. Zymes, and I saw so many dead, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dead and dying mites in that water, or Zymes water. I was so shocked. Your plant should never get to that state. And with the use of the compost and compost tea, you should never have a plant that gets an infestation that leaves such an incredible population of such a destructive pest as those russet mites. And same thing, when you let them get out of control, this is what happens. That plant in the bottom left corner or bottom right corner is probably not going to survive. No matter what you do to it, it's too far gone. The thrips are such good producers, and they're so tiny when they're in their larval stages. You don't see them until they get to be a fairly decent sized adult. And then by then their population is pretty well established, and it's so much harder to kill any pest when it gets to an established population. You really, prevention is everything. And part of prevention is having the healthy plant to start with. That's having the compost tea, the no-till soil, the wild lands that keep predator insects near to you, that are not going to let populations like this become so imbalanced again. And like I said, your plant puts off chemical signals when it's stressed out, and it just says, take me, kill me now. And this is what you get. These things should all have been noticed and attended to before they ever got to this level. And once it gets to this level, it takes quite a lot of dramatic effort to knock it down to a population that you can deal with in a more normal way. Particularly people who grow outdoors under trees have a problem with caterpillars, and caterpillars in the buds. It's a terrible problem. It's really, really hard to get anything into a bud to save it at that point. But one of the many things you can do is to think about spraying the moths that will fly around and lay the eggs to get the caterpillar right in the bud where the food will be readily available for the baby when it's born. That's all the moth is thinking about. And obviously the caterpillars love it. So if you do have to do preventative spraying, you can avoid all these things. Sometimes even in the best efforts at compost or compost tea, something will happen, something will get thrown out of balance, something gets missed in the scoping, and these things can occur. Such as here, we have a case of fusarium on the left and botrytis on the right. And all these things would be avoided if you had a nice, healthy situation with aerobic soils and a lot of air circulation and good bacteria above the soil and below the soil. If you have a lot of beneficial bacteria and fungi on your plant already, there's no room for botrytis or a powder mold to sit down and get established. It doesn't have a place to live because the space is already filled with the good guys. Sorry, no vacancy. And here, that's verticillium. That's more of a really bad fungus that kills your plants. And the same way as the others, it destroys the vascular transport system in the plants. So you get those black streaks. And this is what it looks like in the microscope when you're looking at a soil sample, and you just don't ever want to see that. Try to keep things healthy the natural way, using nature. And you can avoid these kind of situations. If you've got a really nice, healthy soil, you won't get the imbalances that'll bring you root aphids and fungus gnats and such. But just putting sand on the top isn't enough. You need that healthy soil below. And that's where the compost and compost will save you. And if you just walked into a situation and it's already a nightmare, thank God for Dr. Zymes, you can knock it down, but then you've got to start putting in good biology and getting things to a point where your plants can grow healthy and thrive. It never hurts to have a nice barrier of sand on top. Sand can still breathe, and you can water through it, and it'll dry quickly and not foster the eggs of the fungus gnat. Exactly what is compost tea? By definition, aerobic brewed water extract of compost, which, it makes it sound simple. But as you can see, by all the words, it's not that simple. If you're brewing a compost tea, you need to have your brewer in the place where the plants are that you are going to apply it to. If that's in your bedroom, or if that's in your backyard, or if it's out in the field, you need your brewer to be in the same climate that your plants are going to be. Now, it's okay to put it in a little shade, but you don't want to put your brewer indoors and then put that tea that you make on plants that grow outdoors, because you won't have the biology in it that can tolerate all the different temperatures and environmental conditions that are existing out there. You will have only brewed the biology that can handle your indoor or your whatever comfortable place you had your brewer. So it's really important. And it's really important that the oxygen is adequate. A lot of times you see people with just a little bit of bubbles coming up at the bottom of their tank, and it's just not enough. The water has to be moving in your brewer as if it's boiling on a stove. When you see boiling water, it's rolling and it's boiling and it's moving. It's just constant. Hopefully in a vortex form, a more of a donut vortex than a tornado vortex, but either way, you're getting the mixing going on. And that is super important for getting the proper amount of oxygen to keep your aerobes anaerobic and not have a big bloom of ciliates and not so beneficial microorganisms in the tea. The water quality is critical. I am so fortunate where I live. I don't have to think about my water quality. It's really great. But in a lot of places, the water comes out of the faucet brown, and it's weird, and it tastes terrible, and the minerals in it are all out of whack. And in a lot of places, quite a lot of places, the water is purified with chlorine or chloramine, which you've got to either let gas off, or in the case of chlorine, you've got to put humic acids into the water to chelate those minerals and make them unavailable, so they no longer or be a danger to the plants. So you can use that water. And it only takes 1 drop per gallon. 1 drop per humic acid per gallon of water will tie up chlorine and chloramine and make your water okay, if that's what you've got in there. It'll also tie up and chelate any other heavy minerals that you may have in your water. So humic acids, highly recommend all the time when you're watering, especially if you know your water. Such as we have a high pH in our water, so if we want it to go down 8, we put in the humic acids, and it's like 7. So it's just fine. Okay, you want to make sure that your water is not completely wacky pH or full of salt, or the temperature does matter on your compost tea water. When your water comes out of the ground, sometimes it's a little cold, and you get your compost out of the compost pile and put it into your bag to put it into your tea to brew. and it was in the lovely sunshine, 70 degrees or more. Suddenly you're plunging it into this 30-degree water. The bacteria and organisms in there, they freak out. Some of them die, and some of them go into what's called a cyst, and they sort of to protect themselves, but who knows when they'll come out of that cyst. It's kind of up to what they feel like, if it's okay or not. But it's really not beneficial for them. You want to, when you're preparing your compost tea, you get your water, you make sure that it's not got toxins in it, you let it sit a while to get it up to ambient temperature before you put your compost bag into it and shock the crap out of your biology. And you want also, sir.
I'm sorry, I thought you had a pause here. A question came in about RO water. They want to know, can you use RO water or distilled water to make the teas?
Yes, you can, but the only problem with RO water is that whenever you have that kind of a system, it uses just so much water. I think you have to like take 2/3 of the water and throw it away, and you get, some of it left. And the water that is in the discharge water is quite salty. Can't grow anything in that water at all. And I don't know what they do with that water. I know some people around here that just let it run downhill and absolutely nothing will grow where the water goes. It's kind of weird. But if all you have to work with is RO or distilled water, yes, you can use those. You can still make the teas with them. Just, want to make sure to have a microscope so you can tell what's happening with your biology, so you can check it or have access to somebody who does, so that you can make sure that you're growing the right biology in there and adequate numbers of those biology. The quality of the compost is critical. That is really important, because if you don't have good compost, you're not going to have good compost tea. You've got to have the proper biology and a good balance in there. You don't want a bunch of aerobic bacteria and pathogenic fungus, when you want aerobic things and you want beneficial fungus. You want your compost to be not sticky and smelly, but to smell like good earth, clean, pleasant smell. And a lot of what you can tell when you're just smelling compost is whether or not it's done and whether it's not rotten. But if you really want to see what kind of biology and how much, you do need to get yourself to a microscope somehow and either learn how to use one yourself, or find somebody who does and make friends with them, or whatever it takes so you can regularly get your biology checked. Where I have access to a microscope myself, and I invite people to bring me their samples so that they can them for them. And so I'm able to help people in my community that way. Microbes on the leaf surfaces are harmed and killed by various things, including dust, air pollution, pesticide drift, acid rain, and excessive heat and cold. So even if you do use compost and compost tea, you do need to reapply them regularly because of these things, particularly if you're an outdoor grower like myself. I live in a very rural area. It gets very, very dusty. We have cars and trucks going by that put out pollution. I don't know that I have so much of an issue with pesticide drift here, but you may where you are. Acid rain is usually a situation where it's not just the fact that rain is acidic already is one thing, but acid rain has been really highly polluted with chemicals from factories and things. I'm talking about a very much more corrosive situation, which does happen in too many places, unfortunately. But the excessive heat and cold will also, and where I live, summer get very hot. Sometimes we get a week or more where we'll have over 110 degrees. If we're lucky, we don't have those summers, and we'll have it more like in just the low hundreds or the high 90s. But that's still pretty hard on plants and biology on plants. So you need to reapply for that reason. Reapplies to make sure that your biology population is good. Why avoid fermented products in the soil? Well, this may confuse people because I know there's a big push for Korean natural farming, and a lot of it is fermented things, and bokashi is a fermented thing. I'm not talking about that kind of fermented thing. I'm talking about a lot of people don't really quite know what they're doing. They'll hear fermented vegetable and they'll for the vinegar, and it's really not, you're not trying to put vinegar in your plant. Pour vinegar in your plant and kiss your plant goodbye. It's going to die. Okay. There are really good facultative anaerobic bacteria, which means that they can live in both aerobic and anaerobic conditions and survive and thrive. And that's what you're trying to get out of your Korean natural farming, that sort of thing. They're trying to encourage those facultative anaerobes, which are very, very helpful, and nothing against that at all. It's a really good asset ally in the army, but don't think that you can just throw any rotten vegetable and call it fermented into your garden and not think that you can really create some unpleasant biology that is going to backfire on you. And this is the kind of thing you do want to see in composting, just a lot of diversity of biology, a lot of fungal strands, a lot of humic acids, a lot of living biology, all of these things are going to go to work for you, and they're going to cycle the nutrients, and they're going to hold them in their bodies until they die. And when they die or they poop, those nutrients go to the plant in the plant available form. And that's how your plant has all that it needs all the time, because it's reusing, decomposing all this matter all the time. These are little fungal strands that you can see. At first they start in a very microscopic state, and you can't see them at all without a microscope. And they begin to twine together, and they get thicker and thicker. And you can see kind of on the lower bottom how it's starting to twine there, and they get thicker and thicker. And this is how they hold the soil together. This is how they aggregate the soil. This is how they keep our soils from falling apart in the case of floods. And this is how they revive our soils in the case of fires. And this is part of how they keep the retention of moisture in the soil, because all this fungus, if it's in the soil, is retaining moisture. In time of drought, it releases that moisture to the plant that it associates with. And I think we're at the point, Earl, if you want, we can save the rest for tomorrow's continuation of this discussion, and I can get more into the recipes for compost and compost tea and the applications and different types that can be made. If anybody has any other questions they want to ask, now is a good time.
So tomorrow we'll be getting more into recipes.
Yes. Yes, recipes.
Yeah, we had
compost and for the compost tea.
We had a question from Anna. Anna wants to know, as far as worm tea versus compost tea, does it matter what you use?
Well, they just have different biology in them. They have just different amounts of different microorganisms, and that's where the microscope comes in handy. It's all good, but if you want to know exactly how much and of what that you're putting in, how good is it, if you want to compare things, it's really nice to be able to do that and to know for sure. But yeah, the worm compost is great. That is compost.
That's great. What about Big Dog? Big Dog, he wants to know as far as where is Big Dog's question? I just saw Big Dog's question. Is it possible to increase carbon in soil during growth cycle or of potted vegetables or cannabis? Can you increase the carbon in soil?
You can always,
that cycle?
You can always add more carbon materials like ground up straw, sawdust, things like that, if you want to encourage the fungal growth. Is that what we're saying? Yeah. Add that to your compost, add it to your soil, top dress with mulch, do it, the bark and things. That's the whole thing with the, let's see. I'm still trying to figure out these controls at the top. I see where it says there's 18 in the waiting room or something. I don't know how to let them in. Or is that in the chat? I'm so confused. But anyway, do we have any other questions? Okay. I'm not hearing anything. Do we have any other questions?
I'm sorry, I was on mute there. Yeah, Doghouse Media, he wants to know, is there a site to see recipes or ask other questions between shows? But I would definitely suggest that, you know, go check out Mary Beth on her IG channel at MBSIPM.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you can also find us at the amazing Dr. Zymes on IG as well. You can also send her some DM or shoot a message out to her there, and she will sort of, I'm sure, give you some more insight on any other questions that you may have.
Okay, there is a question here about untoasted malted barley for fungal and mycorrhizal growth. And yes, the answer is yes. The fungus loves stuff like that. They but they would always like it better if you ground it up into a powder. You know, if you don't do that, then it will still work on it. It just takes a little longer. You know, you see all the time people are making their little sacks of spawn and using rice and things, and it works great. You know, the fungus loves the carbon, and it has the enzymes to break it down and to release nutrients.
Great. If that's all the questions, I definitely want to thank everyone for
Protect
joining
what
us
does you
today.
harm. Safer choices every day. Learn a better, cleaner way. Grow smarter.